Hi and welcome to my super easy beginners series. I'm going to have a go at some bluebells today. A nice simple have a go at a bluebell scene. So this I'm coming on with a pencil. I've just got a really nice slope happening. This is really to show you everything. So I'm going to pop in a tree trunk here. And we're going to have a branch coming off here. And a branch coming off here. You want to stagger your branches, and then you're going to have a smaller tree behind, which is going to start higher up and be a lot thinner. I'm going to put that here, then we'll take a branch off here and a branch off here so they can overlap, and then we're going to have one coming in a strange direction. Again, it is further back, so it's higher up, it is thinner. You'll find in nature things grow in different ways, so it's very good to pull them out. And again, I'm staggering the branches. They're not coming off at the same point. If they come off at the same point, it tends to look a little bit odd. I'm going to bring this one coming down here, and then I'm going to pop in a little path. So we're going to come this way. So I'm coming from that point, coming wide to about here. From that point again, coming wide, I'm going to come to about here. That's going to give you a nice sense of perspective. So a little bit about the paper that I'm using. It's a cotton paper, Saunders Waterford, £140 rough. It's quarter imperial size, and I've quartered it. So these are about 5 by 7 inches. A nice manageable size, and then I've taped it to the table to stop it moving around. I am going to be using a couple of brushes today. I've got a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger. For the whole of this series I try to use the same brushes, so I realise when you're a beginner you've got a limited set of things and you want to learn how to use them. I've got my water pot, I've got a Cotman pan set that I'm just going to use whatever colours I've got there. If you struggle with your colours, then just pop something in the comments and I will let you know what is best to be used. I'm also going to be using some drawing gum, which is a masking fluid. You can get all different ones. This one happens to be blue. I'll pop a link in the description if you want to get this. And I'm using a palette knife. So I've dipped it in, and I'm going to come really nice and close to the paper and create a few speckles. This is going to be some bluebells in the foreground. So in that tiny bit, if you haven't got a palette knife, you could use a little bit of bank card, and it's just you need something flexible to dip it in and just splatter on. Do not use your brushes, it will ruin your brushes. And I'm just going to leave that to dry. That's going to preserve the white of the paper. So what I'm just going to do is rub out those bits up here. You see how it's going to rub off later. Okay, so I can come in now to the sky while that's drying. For all of this super easy beginners series, I try to show you different techniques every single time. So the short tutorials, and my aim is to give you something to learn and build on bit by bit. As a beginner, you should be trying everything. You won't always be successful at everything, but practice makes you successful. Not doing it at all means you're never going to get better at it. So I tend to just jump you in with a few bite-sized pieces every time. That's water. So round number 10, I've covered the whole of that nice sheen, not puddles. I'm going to come in to a cerulean blue. Get a nice little bit of sky in here. I have lots of other bluebell scenes, several, varying from simple. Beginners, this is like the easiest. This is absolute beginner, you can try this. Up to beginner, you've been going a few years but still need help. Up to improver. So there's lots of different tutorials. If you look in my playlists, you will find lots of bluebells. Bluebells are one of my favourites. So I'm sweeping through with like little smiles in the sky, leaving little bits of white. And then this is a dab of ultramarine blue. Just towards the top. It's always nice to get a little bit more depth towards the top. Right, I'll rinse that one out. I'm going to drop down now. So this is in round number 6. So I'm just making sure that that brush is clean. And then this is a sap green. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of sap green. There's not actually too much water on my brush. I've dabbed it off on the kitchen towel. I make sure you can see everything. You see, I can just dab a little bit off. If you dab off, it stops it flowing too far. Just a tiny bit. And basically, I'm starting to pop some foliage onto the tops of these trees. Sap green's quite a fresh green. You can mix up a green with any yellow and blue. I quite like sap green in the spring. It's about the only green that I do use neat. Other greens I tend to pop brown in to dull them down. So with this sap green as well, I'm going to come into this mix here. So this was a little bit of green and burnt umber, and it's going to be green and burnt umber again. So burnt umber just makes a more natural muted green. So you can see how fresh that looks on the paper with a bit of burnt umber in. It's very much more muted. So what I'm going to do now is pop in some very distant trees. So this is with my round number 6. I'm going to vary the height of them. I want them to all look a bit different. Doesn't matter if you come over the trunks. You've got that line there, and we're going to come back to do something with that line in a bit. So don't try to avoid the tree trunks. Just come along. And stick your trees in. It's the same with the sky. You should always come through a tree. Don't try and avoid putting it behind the tree. This sky behind trees. It's always nice to leave a little bit where your path's going. There's a gap. It's going to lead you through. It's all good composition. I'm going to take a little bit of this darker green just in. So I'm not covering up all the fresh green. I want some of the fresh still to stay. I'm just varying the tone within here. So there's a little bit of dark, a little bit of light. So I've rinsed my brush off. I've dabbed some of the water off. I'm just coming into this burnt umber. So I'm dabbing some of it off because I don't want it to flow too much. What I'm going to do is pop in a couple of very distant trees that are on that horizon line. These are going to blur. You can see them blurring out. That's absolutely fine. That's exactly what I want. It's all giving a sense of distance. Just going to bring a little bit more in here. So this is with my rigger. So this is my long thin brush. I can come in and just do a couple of branches. Just going to bring up a little bit on that side. When you're doing this, I just want you to think about where your foliage is and don't come through that. After telling you to come through it on the tree trunks, these are distant ones, so you need to make sure that they're staying in the distance and not coming over. Just going to bring a little bit more down that side to make it nice and dark. If you do come over, like I've done, this is why I like to show you everything. I'm just going to pick up a little bit more of that green, so I've come over there and just blend that through again. So it's just taking that away. Just make sure it's not too wet. If it's too wet, it will flow and start to watermark. But you see I dab off quite a lot. So I'm going to dry that off now. Okay, so that's nicely dry. What I'm going to do is I've taken a little bit of water into this well that's had a red in previously, and I'm going to make a purple. So it's a purple for our bluebells. So this is alizarin crimson, but whatever you've got. So rose, permanent rose makes a fantastic colour. You could use something. You could use a cadmium if it wasn't opaque. You would get away with it. Basically, you need to make a purple, and it's going to be quite a bluey purple. So I'm going to use the cerulean. I could use the ultramarine. The ultramarine would make a much darker purple. You can see that this is gradually changing. You can check that. So we've got a nice muted purple there. If you had rose, it would make it much fresher. Because I commit to using this set, I'm going to run with what I've got, because not everybody has an endless supply of colours. Okay, so I'm now going to wet this bottom section. So with my round number 10, take it in some water. We've got a nice sheen, no puddles. The masking fluid's nicely dry. And then I'm going to come into this mix. Coming towards the top. In fact, I'm going to swap down because I don't want it to flow too far. It's flowing nicely. So this is with my round number 6 now. I'm going to bring a little bit around the bottom of the tree. Bluebells tend to work in swathes. So you have a swathe and then you have some greenery. So pop some here. We'll pop a little bit towards the bottom here. I'm going to come into that nice fresh sap green. So with a bit of water, bring that in between. Where it mixes, you'll start to get a natural shadow. That's absolutely fine. In fact, you can blend some of it through. You don't want it all to be too fresh. You can see where it's mixing. I'm mixing it basically on the paper, and you get those blends coming through. I'm going to take a little bit just towards the bottom here. Now I need a little bit of a pathway. This is a tiny bit of cadmium yellow. I'm going to bring into the path. You could use raw sienna. That would be my preferred choice. But I haven't got raw sienna in this kit, so it's cadmium yellow. And can you see how I'm just moving a little bit of that purple through? Purple and yellow are complementary colours, so it will make a beautiful natural shadow. Horizontal strokes. Just bring that through. So that's looking really nice. Okay, so I want to boost these a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to take a little bit of the colour in neat. So this is just to the front. You always get a more vibrancy if you mix on the paper. So by dipping into the alizarin crimson and then into the cerulean blue, I'm going to get variety, and it's going to give a really nice vibrancy to that front section. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and now I'm going to come into these trees. So the ones we drew in pencil. So this is the burnt umber. This is my round number 6. These are fairly fine trees, so I'm not going to put too much shadow on. This is coming on to dry now. I'm going to swap down to my rigger, so I'll do these first 2 and then I'll go on to the bigger one. So we're going to flow, resting on my little finger, a few branches off. Some of them want to come up to the foliage. Remember, you want to stagger the trunks, the branches off the trunks. So I'm going to come up to this foliage here. Some can come over. So it's just getting a nice balance. You don't want any floating foliage. And then I want you to make sure that your tree has a jaggedy bottom. So it's coming into the ground. Jaggedy bottom. Remember, they can overlap. And then I'm going to come into this bigger one. So into this one, because it's slightly bigger, I'm going to take a little bit of sap green. So this is going to give like a mossy effect to a bigger tree. And it's also going to give us a little bit of shadow, which we need on a bigger tree. So you can see how it's flowing into that green. So that was with my round number 6, so that was the sap green and the burnt umber. Then I'm going to come down. So we're going to get that nice jaggedy bottom again. Works well. And then because this one is in the foreground, you will have thicker branches. Remember, them branches are still staggered. I can take a little bit more green. I mean brown. I don't want to eliminate all the green, but I also don't want there to be too much. Okay. With a damp brush, so I've taken a little bit of water off. I'm just going to touch this bottom section. That's just going to ground that in. You can do both sides, just enough to ground it to the ground. Okay, I'll dry those ones off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I'm picking up my round number 6 and I'm coming back into this purple mix. So my brush is loaded with water first. I want this to be a little bit more dilute, and then what I can do is create some shadow. So I'm going to come down across the path and take it further away. You just need to make sure that this is nice and watery. It's not too potent. You don't want purple stripes. You want a hint just a hint of colour. So what I'm doing now is just very finely doing a few branches. You can just do an impression of it. It doesn't have to be exact, and it'll give you that sense of beautiful shadow. You can also define your path a little bit with a bit more shadow. So let's just pop a little bit just down this side. So the light's coming this way, so the shadow will be just there on the path. Again, nice and watery. I'm just going to pop a little bit. It's a tiny hint of shadow. Not a lot, just something to indicate that the path is there. Okay, so I'm going to use, this is an oil painting brush that's not been used for oil painting. You can, it's basically a hog hair brush, a stiff brush, and I'm going to show you how to stipple. Now, you don't have to buy an expensive oil painting brush. You can buy packs of children's paintbrushes for well, in the UK you can get a big pack for £1, and they work perfectly well because you are just going to do this and splay it out. So this is my stippling brush. This is what I use it for. You need to make sure that it's clean, that it's damp. It's not wet though. There's no water coming off this. And then what I'm going to do is a little bit of stippling. So I'm coming into this sap green and I'm going to dab on. So it's an upright action. There is very little paint and very little water. That's what we're going into the neat paint. And you get a nice fine foliage effect. So you're just going to build this up. It's quite useful to use the background soft foliage and build on top of that. So those patches of green work wonderfully as a base for stippling. So that's built that up just a little bit, just enough. And then we can do the same down here. Now you can take this everywhere, but if you take it everywhere, it will start to look flat. You want more detail in this foreground, in this front section, this front sort of quarter third than anywhere else. Leaving this blended in the background will give you a greater sense of distance. So rinse the brush out. I'm dabbing it all out. You've got to make sure that it's clean between going from colour to colour. So again, it's nearly dry. So if I take some of the blue and some of the alizarin, so I want that purple, but I want that purple to be thick. So I can just push this way so you can see, look, it's nice thick paint that I'm coming on with. Not the runny mix, I can't use a runny mix. It'll go too blobby. If it goes blobby, it's because it's too runny. So I'm going to bring in some purple bluebells. Then if I take a little bit of ultramarine and a little bit of that alizarin, I want a slightly darker mix. It's going to give me darker. Just to build that up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. And then what I'm going to do is just rub this masking fluid off. So I'm just using the flat of my finger. There's only a few little specks. And rubbing those off. It's going to give like natural highlights. You can feel where it's still there. You can feel the texture, so it's just keep rubbing until you know you've got it all off. But make sure it's dry before you try to rub that off. You see that that's giving that lovely little bit of light in there. So if I swap to my number 6, and then, so I want to pop a bit of colour. I'm going to use a tiny bit of cerulean blue, because basically what I want to do is have a highlight of this colour, but it not to be too white. And then that's going to hold as individual bluebells in the picture. So the cerulean blue works quite nicely for that. So you're basically just lightly applying that over where those bits are. You can take it in a few other spaces as well. I have a few dots over here. And there we go. So, and I'll just very carefully show you how I take the tape off. So just pull around. If you find that the tape lifts the paper, it's often just the paper, or it's still damp. You can try heating it with a hairdryer. It sometimes lets the glue remove a little bit. But you find if you've got a good paper that it does come off quite nicely anyway. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop a link here for my beginners playlist. There are about 35 in there now, and building every week. I release about 2 to 3 videos a week. I'll pop another video here for you. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.